And I just literally decided I'm just kind of done. Don't want to be a government employee and punched my ticket. Been a serial entrepreneur before, so like let's just go start up a security consulting business. Made the wife panic, but I'm like, security's not going away. This is a guaranteed job, so I wasn't worried about that. Ended up, it was funny. Jumped in, got pulled in by some friends of mine. Ended up doing some work for United Launch Alliance underneath IBM. And it was 2016. We were helping them re-architect their data center, their firewalls, everything else. And in the middle of this, they're like, well, we got to deal with these 853 controls. Okay, easy peasy. I know those.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of DIB Innovators. Today I'm speaking with Matt Titcombe, CEO and founder at Peak InfoSec. Matt, thanks for chatting with me today.
Thanks. I appreciate you guys having me on today. This is going to be a fun opportunity to chat and discuss. And well, we're talking CMMC, so probably not that much fun.
Well, I'm excited because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. This is a giant tsunami that's waiting to come, or potential tsunami that everyone sees. Everyone's waiting to see what it looks like. So hopefully we can unpack that together and, really prepare our listeners on, this is what it's going to look like. Here's where we are. And, just peel that onion back a little bit. So before we start, because you've got a great background, let's just hear how you got to the point where you started Peak InfoSec.
Frankly, so I was working at the Air Force Academy at the time as a program manager, managing the cadet academic management information system. And my contractors were auguring in, and I'm driving down the hill from where I live down to the academy, kind of go up a valley before you go in, and just feeling the stress and the anxiety of that job. And I was just going, I feel like I'm having a heart attack, but I know this is stress. I don't want to be doing this. You got to that point of I hated doing it. And I was working prior to that for the Air Force CIO office and had opportunities, like, hey, Matt. And I just literally decided I'm just kind of done. Don't want to be a government employee and punched my ticket. Been a serial entrepreneur before, so like let's just go start up a security consulting business. Made the wife panic, but I'm like, security's not going away. This is a guaranteed job, so I wasn't worried about that. Ended up, it was funny. Jumped in, got pulled in by some friends of mine. Ended up doing some work for United Launch Alliance underneath IBM. And it was 2016. We were helping them re-architect their data center, their firewalls, everything else. And in the middle of this, they're like, well, we got to deal with these 853 controls. Okay, easy peasy. I know those. Do you know anything about this 800-171 that's coming? Huh? This is just right as in draft. So got involved then, helping ULA to start to figure out 800-171 was just getting started. It was one of those fun ones. Great, got them, went off. That's what started pulling me into working back in the DIB. I also got pulled off by IBM to help out with Sony after the North Korea breach to re-architect their data centers next. So that just became another fun-filled job. I love IBM, but working with them can be very slow. I like fast.
Well, now you're working with the government, so how are you doing?
Yeah. That's the other fun part of this, is we started that poll, like monitoring this and doing more and more DIB companies and helping them. We've been involved with CMMC since .4 in 2019, when Katie put out the very first draft in Excel. 400 plus requirements. They were trying to reinvent the entire wheel. And we're originally supposed to be slated 3 years ago for our original C3PO certifications, the third one behind Redspin. That didn't happen. Yeah, it's been a very long, drawn out, even for those of us in the ecosystem. Flip side is, as a ex-recovering part of the government, I'll tell you the other side of the equation. We all are better off anytime the government goes slow. When the government makes fast, stupid decisions, we suffer. I'm very happy the correction from 1.0 to 2.0 to throw away CMMI, which is really happening, is we're working on redrafting the cap. Everything that was CMMI is really kind of thrown away. It is just 800-171, 171 alpha, and guidance from DoD via their supplemental documents. And so it really is the right reset. And so, yeah, I'm happy to see us go slow on this.
No, that is a good perspective, especially, regulations when it's just thrown out can get a little squirrely, especially it's a tough animal to crack.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, Matt is obviously a loud and respected voice in this space. And so I thought, to start off, if you wouldn't mind, CMMC was rolled out. You talked about the journey, it's now sitting in the, OIRA. We're waiting for that to come out. So maybe talk to us about the journey and then what you're hearing on the inside or around the edges of what this is going to look like and how it'll start to affect folks.
Okay. I love that. The loud, that's very accurate. That's never been something somebody's not said about me. So if it has, it's been extremely rare. Is it okay if I bring up a slide and
Please
and we can kind of cover what we're hearing right now? And you can see it on your screen?
I can see it.
Okay. So this is what we normally cover when we're working through all of our clients, explaining things, and even as the ecosystem changes. So sorry, for those of y'all that want to throw spears at me, please don't, or at least throw them at Radical, then maybe they'll pass them on to me. Ex-government program manager. We have to step back and you have to understand context of the way the federal government works. Their fiscal years start 1 October to 30 September. So when you're looking at that chart at the bottom, you'll see the fiscal years and calendar years. They don't line up, and they don't line up on purpose, because the fiscal year cycle is actually a critical factor in this, because it affects the DoD contracts, because that's what we're really talking about, and the acquisitions and how they all line up. What we're continuing here is right now, as you can see our line in today, we're in Q4, of July to the end of September for fiscal year 24. 1 October, we start fiscal year 25. What we're continuing to hear right now, as you said, the rule is over to OIRA. It's gone through all internal adjudication. What we've heard unofficially via Matt, Travis, is we have our weekly authorized C3PO calls. Not a lot of changes. There were some fine tuning, some tweaks, hopefully some clarifications. So that's over at OIRA for their final review, final publication. What we're fully expecting is this rule will complete its OIRA review. It could come out tomorrow. It could come out anytime realistically now between roughly 20 October. 15 October is a little bit better, because then what happens is you've got the 60-day Congressional Review Act period. Okay. It's got to go through that Review Act. And there's a lot of drama of people saying, my congressman's going to call and shut this thing down. Literally have been told that. And I just kind of chuckle, go, no, it doesn't work that way. So it gets to Congress for the Review Act. Here's what has to happen. You have to have a joint resolution in both the House and the Senate. And within that 60-day window, it must pass both House and Senate. When it passes, within that window, the regulation is rescinded. Been done once. What are all of our politicians doing right now? They're off going to get reelected or campaigning for whatever presidential party you want to cheer for. Their attention's not on this. So we fully expect, unless OMB-OIRA kicks it back for administrative issues, but they got plenty of time and it may be playing ping pong right now, is that the rule will come out long before 20 October and be published and then go into effect after that 60-day review period. However, there is a dependency in the rule that says the program will actually start when DFAR 7021 goes into effect. And DFAR 7021 is the acquisition clause that puts the contractual enforcement on this. So what we're continuing to hear, that's going to be March 2025. Now, if you want to be really bored and suffer and, you can't sleep at night and you want to read bureaucracies, just go pick up the DFARS regulations off the internet. And specifically, if you go look at like DFAR 7012, its start date was 31 December. This stuff does not start in the middle of the month, at the start of the month. It's always at the end of the month. And we obviously don't want this to start 1 April for other reasons. So we fully expect Matt Wag today, broken crystal ball with a bunch of duct tape holding it together. After the number of failed guesses on when this was actually going to start, we're estimating this is actually going to start 31 March next year. Now, that's when us as C3POs will be able to start assessments. And then that starts at phase 1 when everybody's going to have to do self-affirmations for level 1 and level 2. Level 3 is really not come into play yet. So it can't roll out. So don't expect any level 3 affirmations until really phase 3. 6 months after that, again, 30 September, next day, 1 October is the start of the next fiscal year. Again, goes back to acquisitions. Now for all new contracts that DoD has specified, now you're going to start to see the CMMC certifications being required. Good news is you got to understand the way this works. And sorry, this is just the way we operate. That first day of October, we're here to spend your money. Presuming Congress has done its act and passed an NDAA that everybody signed off, money's been allocated. Our job is to allocate and spend your money that first day. So program officers are not writing new contracts. Contracting officers are not. I'm married to a retired one. All they did for that first 3 months was allocate money and plan and prep and do all that. Contracting actions really start late December, January, February, March, and awards in summer. So again, there's a little bit of a planned window of when level 2 certifications really start to show up, really start to ramp up realistically. We're now into late fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 25 is when all of this is really going to happen. Just the way, and again, looking at the acquisitions.
Let's be clear there. So late fiscal year 25 is when
phase 1
contracts will mandate self-assessments, and that really won't kick in until December or January of 25.
Well, that phase 1 self-assessments, 2 things are going to happen. Officially, if you're a prime, you will see that it's a no-cost modification of the contract. You will see that anytime there's an award, what happens on 1 October, or anytime awards, mods, and you're doing mid-year executions at that point in time, they'll add the 7021 clause in for self-affirmation. That will happen as a no cost. The moment that goes into effect and the updated version of SPRS comes online, it doesn't matter what DoD is doing, because frankly, every prime out there, everybody who's on a teaming partner with a prime is going to mandate you need to get your stuff updated in SPRS today. So be ready for that pressure in that first month when this starts of updating SPRS.
And that's just updating the SPRS. Doesn't mean they're not worried about the score. It's just making sure it's done.
Yeah.
And you have identified the gaps and the remediations required.
Right. Now, scores do matter in self-assessments, because if you don't make that threshold, you're not eligible for conditional certification.
What is that threshold right now? Where is that identified?
Right now, we're still hearing 88 and no 5-pointers, no 3-pointers, and there's 5 1-pointers you cannot have. Now, FIPS is allowed if you're using FIPS capable devices, but not FIPS validated.
Okay. And then if we go to phase 2, same kind of cycle, October of 25, it rolls out.
And then phase 2, you start to see it showing up in contracts. Now, again, that's going to be limited number of contracts in this time frame. And then phase 3, this is now where you see level 3 start to show up. There is a little danger part most people have not read in the regulation that they can do in phase 3. They can retroactively add in at this point in time CMMC certifications for level 2 into all existing contracts at this point. You've had enough time. You've had enough warning. DoD is now telling you, you need to be CMMC certified by the time you start phase 3, if you're a prime or you're a tier 1 subcontractor.
And so with this, I've heard folks say, this is a 7-year rollout, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have 7 years to do this. So there are companies and folks that are assessing risk say, well, I'll wait till the government tells me to, because right now, just because it might happen, it's going to take 7 years to roll out. Tell me why that might be a fallacy.
So it is both It is both true and wrong at the same time. You gotta love CMMC. We get to play with both. The reality, there's two parts going on in here. The accuracy of, yes, this is going to be incrementally rolled out against all contracts over a 7-year period-ish. The other side of this is the market pressure. And if anybody's dealing with primes right now, they're already asking, when are you going to get CMMC certified? They're already putting pressure on you to get joint surveillance voluntary assessed by DIBCAC and a C3PO to get ahead of the pressure wave that's going to come. Now, when we're working with clients, this is the nice little chart you see there with all the straight lines. That's DoD's plan across that 7-year period. Looks nice. That plan does not account for all the primes directing everybody to be CMMC certified ASAP because they want to compete as quickly and effectively as they can. Does not account for all the external service providers, C3POs, et cetera, that we've all got to get certified, radical accounting firms, legal firms, anybody who has access to CUI on behalf of their client to help them to execute, you're in scope and you're probably going to have to get certified. That's going to create a pressure wave to get all of this done. Now, the way I explain this, the reality is, yeah, you can wait. And, between this chart and the last, this is where we're now in a business opportunity cost conversation. And I'm just kind of go back. I'm sorry, I was the dork nerd in school, that never fit in. Still probably am today. Hey, I was on a, podcast with Leia Shilablot as a Jedi when she was a Sith. So you've kind of guaranteed nerdness here.
You've referenced Sesame Street multiple times as well, so I appreciate that.
The fun part is, the analogy I use, this is like the school bus. All the cool kids are with the primes in the back of the bus, and that's where the high profit margin contracts are. The further you go down the supply chain, the more you move up to the front of the bus, lower profit. You are making a decision. The longer you want to wait for this to roll out, you are slowly getting forced to the front of the bus. The problem is going to be when phase 4 hits, and we're guessing September 2027, the bus driver, which is DoD, is going to kick you off the bus and you're walking to wherever. And that's what's going to happen. I always tell my clients, you know what, this is, we help you to build your poem. We look at this chart, we look at the other chart, we kind of figure out where your pressure is when you're trying to grow, strategize. And we ask the question, when do you want to get certified by? Use that to drive the timing and sequencing and expenditure of getting certified over time. Doesn't have to all be done now overnight, but you might be trading costs down the road. Flip side, the reality I've seen, we came in with clients who are brand new to the market, helped them to get started, walked them through, did a self-assessment, issued them a letter of attestation, not a certificate yet. This is just an 800-171 letter of attestation. They took it up to their primes and even to the Navy. The Navy was then directing their primes to go to them for work. They tripled their business revenue on their DoD contracts in a matter of months and have covered their costs as an investment.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something to consider. I've always wondered, at some point you'd think the level of your compliance until it becomes you have to be fully compliant and, have achieved a certain score.
Yep.
Ought to be rolled in. If they're serious, they ought to roll it into actual, contract scoring. And it sounds like effectively it has.
They have already right now the supplier performance risk system.
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago, this is before they allowed it. We already had a client lose a contract because their SPRS score and the team that they were in was below the other one. And it was kind of reviewed as a technical risk factor amongst other factors. Now with the actual DFARS clauses, they are now taking SPRS scores as a risk determination factor and using that to as a technical evaluation criteria is the technical term to guide what they're doing. So if you want to be competing for DoD contracts, you need to get above 88. You really need to get there fast.
Yeah, we've seen this. I'm curious if how much have you seen this? A company will come in like, well, we've got an SPRS score, like 75, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you actually go help them actually do a proper assessment, and they're still like negative 75. Have you seen that?
Yeah, all too often, unfortunately, what I see a lot of people do, they make two mistakes. They just read the 171 requirements, and that's why when you're submitting your score, it's technically considered basic because you are doing it at the 110 requirements level. So, and there's hidden requirements actually in the assessment objectives. The other thing, because they're not doing it at the assessment objective, which breaks down the verb noun pairs against each other, so you're cross-checking against them all. They don't understand the definitions and then how things fit and work with the other requirements. A lot of them think, oh, this requirement's over here. Well, classic one I always point to, 314.1 actually sets your service level timelines for how fast you're supposed to be doing patching after you've done vulnerability management and discovering and identifying that patch. If you haven't done 314.1, you can't do patching in that accurately. And you get cascade failures down these, and that's what we run into a lot of, just a lack of understanding.
Yeah, it's a problem. And that's the other part that I think companies struggle with. They go through and they go, well, vulnerability. Yeah, if I see something, I'll do it. Like, vulnerability is actually a full security measure. Like, you have to do vulnerability management operations. People's required, tools are required.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another challenge that we see, that, yeah, and their self-assessment wrong, but just that whole capability of what does vulnerability remediation and assessment mean? What is vulnerability management program? Just helping companies understand that as a challenge. So as we look out there, they're saying nominally, this number's thrown out like 80,000 OSCs, or companies that need to be certified. I think that's probably low, because as we're finding, to your point, accounting firms or financial firms, or there are so many more. A food service term company, but it's delivering it to a deployed space, I'm sure is going to have CUI capability. There's going to be CUI in these. So I think that number is going to blow up. So they all have to get, so if we just looked at that, and maybe that was I think that was your cycle of the demand, how many C3PAOs are going to be needed to do this correctly? How long is it going to take them to get cooking? And then if you look at most companies, I would say, that are going to become level 2 probably need a service provider at some level.
Mm-hmm.
And so if someone's doing that and they have security information, those companies, so MSPs, for example, need to be CMMC, the same level, but let's just call it level 2 for sake of this argument. I don't know how many MSPs support the DIB, but it's not like it's a giant, it's a very niche marketplace. There are over like 48,000 MSPs in the United States. How is this all going to get done? Like, how do you see this effectively being managed? Is there priorities? Are you being directed by DIBCAC or anyone to prioritize where you do your?
You're actually asking a question we've been asking Matt Travis to in turn ask DoD. So let's go back to the numbers. You're right. DoD is roughly saying 80,000. Where you understand that 80,000 came from, it goes back to contracts. Raytheon was the prime. Raytheon had this list of tier 1 contractors, and then anybody else underneath there who had to get clearances, right? Facility clearances. That list, they grabbed them all across for the past 3 years of all their contracts within DoD, dumped them out, deduped them, and said, oh, here's 85,000. And then our guesstimate is this, and our guesstimate is, and guessing again. It's not even a thumb up for a wag. It is just a complete made up, stuff we can sell within the Beltway so we don't get too beat up. When you talk to Defense Contract Management, not Defense Counterintelligence Security Agency, their estimate is, that's about times 10 for companies that have CUI. So you're probably talking not 85, probably more 850,000, because all the little mom and pops that are buried down deep, that they never get percolated up to the top, because all the subs want to protect their supply chain, because Raytheon will steal them. So that's the game that goes on. Then to your point, you got the MSPs, et cetera. Yeah, we're looking at a ginormous amount of companies. And the other thing is, this is global. We're in negotiations from Korea to Switzerland right now. And I'm not joking. And my passport's already a super thick one, and I can guarantee I'm going to be, it takes a couple supplements and replacements as I go through this. How we get through this, there's a couple things going on right now. When we originally signed up as a C3PO, the kind of verbal agreement we had is, and this is back before external service providers came into scope, et cetera, is that we would try and prioritize all the companies that were competing for that early initial wave of contracts that were coming out. That would allow the ecosystem to grow and allow not only C3POs, and it's really not the number of C3POs is the issue, it's the number of certified assessors. You can have CCPs, I can bring in subject matter experts, but it's got to come down to that certified assessor. They're the only one that's qualified to make a determination technically of whether or not that requirement is met or not met. So that becomes our limiting factor in reality. There's roughly 250 of us right now, and not all 250 are fully qualified yet. So we are asking DoD, is your expectation for us to prioritize those companies competing for that early wave of contracts? If so, we will need to know exactly what that contract is, contract numbers, et cetera, because I'm not going to go hunt it down. The other part of this is what we're hearing, and the nice part about that kind of phase one window is a prioritization of managed service providers, managed security service providers. The other thing in this that a lot of people forget about, Microsoft, for example, went through and did a JSVA, not for their cloud service. It's for their help desk team. That professional services is in scope for CMMC certification. So cloud service providers have kind of got a dual edge side in here of either being FedRAMP equivalent authorized. That may change and get lessened and just be allowed to be 800, 171, which I think is really the right answer. That's all it's required per 32 CFR. And they have to have their professional services ready. So yeah, there's more to this. Accountants, people, ERPs are the bane of this, and every accountant company that goes into that client's ERP and is using their infrastructure to log into that ERP to help them to manage it, you're in scope.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. Well, it's interesting too, because I feel like this has created a whole new niche kind of industry, like the consultative services of helping companies. And, on the security side, there's a lot of snake oil salesmen. There are folks that are selling things that they can't do. They say they're doing it, but they're really not. They're not managing, the technologies correctly. They're not providing the service or the value that is really should be there. We've heard of some, I'll just leave it at that, of you've got a lot of companies or, RPs, but they don't really have CCPs or CCA trained, and they're running people through this compliance journey. And then even in the the JSVA, they're failing. How is that? How are you seeing that's looked at, from who can help? I'm a company that needs to get certified. How do I get assistance of someone I can trust,
The hardest thing is when it's going to come down to that. First thing is if it sounds too easy, it is. There is no easy button in this. If they're telling you you can get certified and we can get you through this in a couple months, probably not. Most times when we're helping clients to get ready, it's typically at least a year. The problem is what we really run into, this is not an IT problem. Realistically, and that's the first thing that we have to tear off the Band-Aid and say, I got your IT director here, thank you very much, he's an expert, we're going to want him here. We're talking changing your culture, we're talking changing the way you operate, we're talking changing your business, because it's not an IT system we're securing, it's your information system about however you move that CUI through your business, manual or digital, and all the components it touches and all the people and all the facilities. That's your scope. And when it comes down to this, invariably, we end up getting involved in some level of business transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Some are more into it, some are less. We're honest right now, and we're just kind of blunt. We'll fire you. We just simply say, if you're not willing to stand up a governance board, and if your executive leadership team is not on this board and they're meeting regularly, you're fired. I got other clients who really want help. I got limited time. We can go do more somewhere else. Love taking your money, but I'm just not that kind of guy. And it's just the way we operate as a business is, literally. And that's the biggest challenge we find is everybody wants that silver bullet, that easy button. The CMMC in 3 days.
I just want to buy it. Like there's a lot that goes into that. You can't just buy CMMC level 2.
I just want this little enclave and everything will work and be perfect in this little enclave. Oh, well, what do you do in that enclave? Well, I have to take my information out and move it to my CNC machine. Your little enclave just went and it don't work anymore and you're now non-compliant. But they said, doesn't matter because they didn't take you up to how do you move your information.
Right. Let's do something. I am a 50-person company. I make a component on a satellite that the government is buying. Yeah, I've got high-tech manufacturing for, or however, and 50-person company, I'm not going to enclave. I just want to do my entire environment, and make it CMMC level 2. Because there's too much complexity in trying to break that apart. So let's talk about a couple things, because I think cost is one of those things that people just don't, there's not a good list out there. And I know it can vary greatly, but I'm just asking your opinion as you've gone through this. So someone needs help with, let's just go through the phases. Probably a gap assessment would be the first thing.
First step for us is always a gap assessment. Unless we're walking in, you're a completely brand new company startup, and this is a greenfield, and we get to start, and you want to do this right from the very start. I love the concept. I've yet to find one, just to be honest. So we need to know where you're at. It's a journey, and you can't get to a destination unless you know your starting point, because that builds your plan, what all the gaps, all the deficiencies, all the changes that need to happen to your business. So we always start with that gap assessment up front. Small businesses, straightforward, easy ones. Yeah, our gap assessments are starting at $15K. Just, it is what it is.
So like a 50-person company that's doing a dev environment and they've got a normal,
normal single location, maybe
single location.
Yeah, a couple, maybe machine shop, CNC machines, $15K for us to come in and do a gap assessment. We're going to come in, go through all 320 assessment objectives, treat it as a CMMC, except we'll give you recommendations. Now, that's when we're on the consulting side. If you want to keep this a C3PO, I can't give you recommendations. And if they're working with a company like yours, you're going to know, well, Matt said we didn't meet 353 Bravo for multi-factor authentication of local privileged accounts. And like, oh, okay, that means we got to go fix this. You know how to interpret to go fix that.
So you're going to give recommendations, the remediations to the gaps. Now someone needs someone to walk them through so they don't have a company like Radical, or others. Let's say you walk them through that.
We have done that. Just to be honest, we are phasing out of that as we're prepping now for CMMC. We've always been doing consulting. We'll dabble in consulting a little bit just to keep sharp on the tools and techniques that are out there. But yeah, we basically bring you in. Our next phase for us is actually planning. We take that remediation list. It's a shopping list. Great. Now let's go build the recipe of how do you get to where you want to be. And then we lay that on the poem, and we always start, when do you want to get certified? Okay, that becomes our milestone date. Now we build the plan to see, can we achieve it? And let's make sure we leave a lot of slack because, we can get through policies and plans, even using the templates we provide. It's a part of our package. No, it's 3-4 months just to get everybody to sign off on policies and procedures. And it's like, we can get through it. I'm like, okay. We're going to add a lot of slack, still go through all the slack invariably, but I'm a big fan of a big, hairy, audacious goal. If you don't have something you're targeting for, you're never going to achieve it. So we work through that. That becomes then the remediation as executing that plan.
A company lays that out. Let's say a company, you or a similar company goes through then that plan journey. There's a cost to that? What is that for the company that I laid out nominally?
Right. Standard for us is 10,000.
Okay.
We help you to draft your architecture, we give you a draft SSP out of the results. Now and an SPRS score. So now you're fully eligible in today's world for contracting with DoD. And yeah, we help you to build that plan. Execution, then, that becomes time and materials for us, just simply because I refer to it as Matt's counseling couch. Sometimes it literally, I get a client that will just go online, schedule some time on my calendar. Hey, we need to grab an hour. We want to ask you some questions. Okay. Then there's others where I'm the virtual CISO for their company. And we run their governance board. We oversee their IT. We don't do IT. I've done that in the past. That's where this gray came from. I'm happy to stay away from that. So you got both extremes on the level of effort we've put in the past. So I can never quantify that amount.
Sure. Yeah, that's a tough one. Let's just say, so from your experience as you watch this, I'm that company, I'm on Gmail. I'm using Google, for example. May need to change, may not. To get a company that's just doing that with the out-of-the-box solution from G Suite, what's a nominal, as you've seen, and there's probably a band, to get to everything required on the tools, hiring people if you need people to run vulnerabilities like that, updating the IT stack, as well as getting the appropriate either services overlaid to do the security or people that could do it internally. Nominally, if you had to give a band, what is that?
Nominally getting ready in that band, just the kind of remediation costs, not the planning and the gap assessment.
Just this piece to do the
roughly $100K. Here's the reality is one of the biggest costs that you're highlighting is the potential migration to a cloud environment that's going to accept the DFARS 7012 clause. And you have the satellite company that's going to be export controlled. By the way, NASA is declaring all of their CUI export controlled information because they don't have a technical category. So everything's ITAR. That's how they're playing. So now you got to be in that high level. The problem of Google, I've used Google. We supported clients. One of my clients used to be Toyota Research Institute. They lived and breathed in Google. It is leaky. We could not find a product that would contain information from a data loss prevention. So unless you're using a Google Chrome device, you got problems with Google. Love it. Michael Dempsey will probably shoot me if he ever watches this, but it's just one of those things of it's an issue, but the problem is you're still going to pay to migrate from Google because Google commercial is not the same as their Google government cloud. And the Google government cloud, as I continue to hear it, is more expensive than going to Microsoft. So then
only 100,000.
Yeah.
Keep going. If you had more, just to keep peeling this back.
The biggest, this is where we get into business transformation. So out of that 50 people, does the guy who's actually running the CMC shop need the full-blown thick client license for Office? No, he's just looking at Excel spreadsheets, doing SharePoint, email. Okay, let's just give him the browser version only. We just reduce some costs. So we start doing business transformation. We had one client actually like, well, what could we really do? Well, you could just use Surface tablets and your guys could check them out, log into it, and they would only have Teams on there. And they would be able to get the jobs. The job would move to the CNC machine. If they got a question for the engineering staff, they would chat with the engineering staff in Teams. They jumped into that. Their licensing cost dropped. It was a business transformation, and it took a company that's willing to relook and rethink how they're doing it. Most don't. So that becomes the biggest headache in there. Problem is, when you go chasing just license cost, we typically always start high with Microsoft and wean down, because what we find is two things. We don't want to use Microsoft endpoint security, we want to use SentinelOne. Now you got other contracts, you got integration, you got fights. Let's go talk CrowdStrike and Microsoft from a few weeks ago. We know how that went. So those issues are going to happen. That's more cost, that's more headache, more documentation you've got to prove. And then it's harder actually for us as an assessor. Because now your scope is more complicated. More complicated your scope, the more time it takes for me. So you're in a trade-off there. And right now, Microsoft Suite, if you'd asked me 3 years ago about using Microsoft Defender for endpoint protection, I would have laughed in your face. Nowadays, it's just as capable of everybody else out there, including CrowdStrike. So
we may have a sidebar conversation about that later, but
and now what I'm going to say is, are there a lot of areas I'd like to see improvements on it? Yeah. But is it perfect? No, none of them are.
well, the other part that I think, and I don't know if that was in your cost, is so to implement a good endpoint, call it what you will, out of the box endpoint. And this is also where you look at security versus compliance. Now, the box endpoint isn't secure. It may check a square. It's better than nothing. But if you actually want to, you have to have someone managing that. You get some vulnerabilities. Where are you getting them? Who does them? Who implements them? And so that's another cost of just now maintaining the things that are required for CMMC level 2, like vulnerability management operations. That's not an IT business transformation. That's a operational cost.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of presumption in this. Normally you get to 50 people in a business. They've normally at least got one full-time IT person, or they've got an MSP who's helping them.
Right.
And we've had the conversations with MSPs, like, the client was actually sending their backup files over to their racks. I'm like, okay, well, you're now cloud service provider, or you're now fully in scope. And well, we don't want to do that. Okay, well, this is coming. You're going to, oh, we don't want to do that. Next thing I know, 2 days later, the client has received an email that, hey, we need to be looking to transition our services to somebody else because we're not going to pursue CMMC. All of a sudden, why? Implementing security for service providers makes it less cost efficient for them. And those costs will go up. I've not seen it happen. It's just a way of operating, but there are ways to work around that. And that is kind of a cost in there. And that can also be a cost area that you may have absolutely nobody, and suddenly we're having to contract somebody in because you're in the middle of Podunk, Iowa. And you don't have anybody that can really help you to maintain and manage. So now you're having to bring somebody in from Iowa City.
Yeah, and I think that's the highlight. One of the highlights of, I think, as folks look at this, if you have an MSP who's taking care of handling some security, or an MSSP, they have to achieve the same CMMC level right now as the OSC.
Now, there is a way to keep the MSP out of scope if they work on all of your IT infrastructure, your accounts only. But all that inherent benefits of being an MSP of multiple staff, throughput, perceived, you've got an infinite number of IT people can keep me up and running. It's kind of the expectation management of being an IT provider in my past. Yeah, I understand the headache of that. That breaks. Now all of a sudden you're paying for Johnny and you're full-time to help your company. So it's more expensive. The good news is, just to be honest, this is a whole nother of stupid churn out there in the ecosystem. Security protection data is not CUI. Now, we've had clients that, we need a remote management tool. Let's have a conversation. You can use ones that are off the shelf. You need to do these things to keep it out of scope. Well, should we go FedRAMP? Well, okay, this is now a business risk conversation. Beyond Trust has a FedRAMP RMM. You can go use that. A little bit more expensive, works, but you are, do you use Cisco Duo commercial or federal? Same price. Literally a toss of a coin for preference right now. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Well, let's then go to, so now we get into the assessment side of it. So done our self-assessment. We've gone through the remediations. We've, migrated, updated our IT system. We think we're good. We've done it. We've done all the remediations. What is an assessment going to cost that same company?
So right now, the bad news, it depends upon what DoD and the AB are going to say. Our approach that we're trying to pursue, especially for smalls, we really want to do this to keep their costs down. We're required to have an assessor, and we're required to have at a minimum a QA person right now. What we want to do is and that QA is only part-time. Basically quality check and making sure and if there's questions available. We want to keep it down to that team of 1.25 people. The second person would be all of our assessments would be reported in Microsoft Teams. Now we've brought integrity to the assessment. We've recorded everything, screen shares, conversations like we're having right now. That brings, if there's a dispute, we can actually go back to real evidence of what was shown instead of he said, she said. That reduces costs. We're hoping that right now the draft rule puts no constraints about the minimum size of the team. The original rule is 5. It's because DIBCAC brings in a whole bunch of people because they can't retain them. They're training them and they're getting sucked off into the commercial market faster than they can train them. So
Sure.
why they bring in a herd in their assessments? We want to bring in 1.25. So that small business, yeah, again, I can't give you all the exact details. Unfortunately, we are in that $50,000 range at a minimum right now.
Yeah, I think that's actually pretty reasonable. There are other folks that are charging a lot more.
Yeah. Again, for smalls like this that are not, we use Office 365. We got a couple on-premise servers. We use this, everything's up in Azure Sentinel, for your SIM, blah, blah, blah. And it's really contained and smartly done. Yeah, you're probably talking that range. The challenge becomes literally 6-person client company, right? Azure, Google, and AWS GovClouds, and on-premise. That's now more expensive than that 50-person company we've been talking about. Because now, great, I need to know more. Oh, you want to host a data lake? Oh, I now need to bring in a data lake expert that understands how you've set it up to interpret the way you've set it up to tell me so I understand whether they've met those. Again, complexity will drive your costs for us. It's not the number of people. It is just the components.
Right. Yeah, so you bundle that up, this is not an insignificant cost for companies.
No, it's not. And the other thing that we see, DIBCAC's role right now, let's assume this company's got multiple locations. Now, when I say multiple locations, we've got one of our clients has got a main building, and then they've kind of got a campus area network all within the same city. They're literally a couple blocks apart. I'm treating that as one location because they all go through that main office. But all of a sudden, if that company's now got an office in Virginia, one in DC, or one in Washington State, one in Arizona, and each of these locations operates physical security differently, different access controls, different lists, different everything. The way DIBCAC has been reading these is each of those sites is a separate assessment for physical.
Here's one that drives me crazy. I'm a company hybrid. I take my computer, or we all take computers home. Company X takes computers home. I come into the office for culture and to be around each other. All I do is plug in to the network. Yeah. Yep. No different than me plugging in home. But now all of a sudden, if I were just 100% remote, I have no physical location. But now it's the exact same thing, but now the physical location.
Yeah.
Or multiple locations.
And what you're really describing is that white collar kind of architecture engineering firm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Completely agree with you. And it can be properly architected to actually do it that way. The problem is what happens is when you come into on-premise, oh, well, we're all walking around, we're all talking CUI. It's kind of an open area from a controlled, space. And CUI can be left open in that area. This is kind of like back when I used to work in SCIFs. Yeah, you would leave top secret documents sitting with the sheet on top of your desk because there was a safe you had to go through to get into there. It's kind of that paradigm. Now, if everybody's safe is different and the way you get that badge is different and it's a different badging system is central, that becomes the problem of, oh, well, you're making these parts this way here in this building. You've got different physical security system that you're not centrally managing, and you got different processes at each location. That's basically been DIBCAC's perspective that each of these sites then would need separate physical assessments. Yeah. And it really sucks because we did a JSVA for a construction company. No longer active duty, and they don't allow veteran ID cards to get on military bases anymore. It really sucks. It was really it was used to be easy, but not anymore. I spend more time in the visitor center waiting to get the little card, piece of paper that was only good to be thrown away than I did actually doing the site survey for those secondary sites. Now, to your point, if you've written your acceptable use policy appropriately, you've addressed the requirements from both 3.8 and 3.10 around authorized storage protection, because now you're the one protecting that CUI component. We work wholly distributed. It's perfectly fine. A lot of companies are doing it that way. If architected and set up right, go for it.
Oh, it's perfect. Well, let's just wrap up real quick. A couple, just high level. How do I select from a company the right C3PO for consultancy or assessment? What things should I be thinking about?
The right C3PO, you're going to want to find one, a couple different ways to do it. Finding ones that understand your architecture and technology. We're one of the few C3POs. We work completely on Macs. So a lot of times, oh, you work on Apple. Great. We're an Apple shop. You know how to assess, and it's less friction and time for us to go through and certify. That C3PO that's an in-depth expertise on AWS, awesome. Let's get them in because they're a better fit for what you're doing there. A lot of it, the other thing is that we do tend to find is right now with things being so nebulous, it's a little bit more around interpretations of, hey, this is we've set this up, or are we in line with interpretations around stuff? That's going to be kind of a wide variance until DoD starts publishing something better than the cybersecurity FAQs, that then we all can work off of a standard knowledge base that will drive out some of the variability in there. After that, it really is going to come down to the methodology that the C3PO is taking, how much their project management costs, how much other secondary staff they got coming in to do assessments because they're trying to train. And we are going to have to train CCAs. And unfortunately, it's like going to the doctor's office. You got the doctor and you got the intern and you got the PA. And medical costs so much because, we got to pay for all of them because we got to keep that education system moving forward to keep that pipeline going. This is the other reality of this. This is not going to stop with DoD. NASA's already requiring, proof of third-party assessments of your implementation of 853 or 171. So be ready for this to go federal.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, this has been awesome. We could go for another 2 hours, I think. I'm lucky. See, I get to ask these questions. I don't have to pay for T&M. So let's do another podcast with more people in my team coming up so we can get more information. No, you're wealth of knowledge. Wealth of knowledge.
Have a technical deep dive conversation one day if you really want to go crazy.
Yeah, well, I'll have our compliance guys come in and handle that. Can get more, have our VSOC show up and manage that. Well, real quick, someone wants to get a hold of you because obviously, super well respected. You're doing great things. You're a great, voice for the small businesses as well as, the DoD and helping to keep these aligned. How do folks get a hold of you, follow you?
Easiest way, obviously do a search for Matt Titcombe, Titcombe. Not many people with that last name. Not many people want to have that last name. I know growing up in high school, I did not want to have that last name. The benefit is it's definitely a distinctive last name. So I'm on LinkedIn. If you just start finding me in there, look for Peak InfoSec. We're at peakinfosec.com. We're in the marketplace. So we're available. Just take a look, reach out to us. And we do a lot of conversations like this with clients that, we're just trying to understand where we're at, get a general sense and an education for their leadership team. And we always do those pro bono because we do want to give back to the market. There's so much misinformation out there that we want to try and make sure people are given accurate information that is not going to get them into trouble and or want to sue, that dumpster fire that, just help them to get nowhere, but spend a lot of money on.
Well, that's great. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate your time. And hopefully we can figure this out. So as a country, we can, secure our data, be compliant, and move forward on those contracts, make some money.
Yep. And I'm after having all my data stolen by China with my passport information and all that from my family. And yeah, I'm all about protecting our information nowadays.
Here, here. Well, thank you, sir. And let's keep in touch.
All right, have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.